All right, so if you clicked on this video, you're probably looking to grow faster, and we're going to explain and give you kind of a field guide on how to do that. The most important variable and the key term that we need to find if you want to grow muscle quicker is going to be volume, which in this conversation is going to be total weekly sets per muscle group that we're going to be doing. The literature currently tells us that somewhere between 10 and 20 sets is likely going to be a good average starting point per muscle group per week in terms of set count. But we can do a little bit better than that. And this video is going to serve as a field guide to determine if you need to up your volume or reduce your volume or quit lifting entirely because you're a hopeless failure. First and foremost, is your performance increasing week to week? Are you adding reps? Are you adding load for the same relative effort? If this is the case, you're likely somewhere floating in that appropriate volume range for you, because what we know is happening is that you're lifting with enough volume to cause stimulus and to cause adaptation, but not so much that you're not recovering. So again, if you're adding reps or load, it's enough stimulus, but not too much that you can grow and still recover. So you're right in that zone, and it's possible we might not need to touch your volume at all, but we'll explore if we need to make small modifications. If you were truly underdosing your volume amount, because you would not be delivering enough stimulus to the muscle and to the system, you actually wouldn't be able to add reps or add load over time. So if your programming or your strength is plateaued over time, like months and months and months, it's possible you're underdosing your volume. The inverse is also true. If you are plateaued or even underperforming, it's possible that you're overdosing your volume. And this comes with it a litany of other side effects like sleep, mood disruption. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But it becomes a little bit more obvious if you're overdosing your training as opposed to underdosing your training. So what do you do with your volume? What are the practical steps from here? Step one, select a volume that is somewhere between 10 and 20 if you're not sure where to start, and see if you're able to add reps and load over time. If you're adding those reps and load over time, again, we know you're having a stimulative amount of volume. What you can do from there is experiment with adding volume very slowly over time. The reason you want to add volume slowly is because acute changes in volume, especially if they're large, is an injury risk. And we don't want to snap your crap up and have you falling out of the gym for months at a time, because we know adherence is the most important thing for growing muscle. What you should notice with this volume addition is a quicker increase in either rep strength or load strength over time. There's going to be a point at which you're adding volume, which you start to notice that subjective measurement of fatigue start to creep up on you. So let's say you're doing 10 sets per week, you go in, your workouts are a breeze, super easy, you get them done, and you're able to add a rep each week. That's a great volume for you. Now let's say you bump it up to 12, 14, and then 15. And with 15, you're still able to add that reps and that load that you were expecting, but you notice at the end of every workout, you're kind of cooked. And then by the last workout of the week, say Friday or Saturday, you're kind of a couch potato. That's an indicator that that fatigue is starting to increase more rapidly than what we would like. And that would be something to watch out for. That's not exactly a red flag, but that's kind of a yellow flag, meaning you might be pushing volume a little bit too quickly and something to pay attention to. What could be a red flag beyond that is if you start to notice mood disruption, sleep disruption, or joint pain. These are all signs that either that exercise or that volume amount is not necessarily working well for you, and we probably pushed it a little bit too far, and we might need to take a step back with a acute deload or a longer deload, so like 3, 5, 7 days, depending on your need. With this, keep evaluating your markers of stimulus, so rep strength, load strength, muscle pumps, muscle disruption, delayed onset muscle soreness. All of these can kind of be used together to paint a picture of how much stimulus you're delivering to the muscle. And you contrast that with joint pain, fatigue, mood, irritability, etc. And you use both of these sides of the equation to determine the right volume for you. Essentially, you want to maximize the stimulus and minimize the amount of fatigue that you're accruing. The stimulus versus the fatigue that you're going to ensue is important in the conversation because volume has a diminishing return effect on hypertrophy, meaning you'll get a large majority of your gains from, let's say, that estimated 10 sets per week. And if you go all the way up to 20 sets per week, you're not going to get double the amount of growth. You might get a 50% addition in growth from doubling your volume. So it's a very much diminishing return until eventually you start to overtrain, but hopefully we stop well before that. So that fatigue cost that you're paying, you need to be very, very sure that it's worth it for you. If you're just looking for general health and muscularity, stick more towards that lower end where you're able to add reps and load to the bar, and you're going to be great for overall health. If you're trying to min-max everything and you're playing Dark Souls on like the hardest difficulty, then you could stick around for the rest of this video where we're going to try to kind of optimize that volume for you. So we keep using this flow chart of measuring performance, pump, disruption, soreness, and adding, let's say, 1 to 3 sets per week, monitoring fatigue as we go, until eventually we're going to bump up into our limits for either our local musculature or our systemic fatigue. How you tell if you've bumped up against your local limit is going to be potentially a decreased mind-muscle connection. So with how you know you've bumped up against your local fatigue is going to be potentially a decreased mind-muscle connection for one. So when you're going in and you're doing a couple sets and you start to get a really good contraction, let's say in your lats, and you're feeling it, you're feeling the pump there, everything feels good. But then as you continue to do sets, you kind of lose that sensation that you would be getting in the lats. That's that mind-muscle connection feeling going away. And this can be harder and harder to feel when you're really cranking out those volumes. It becomes more of an exercise in just like moving the weight rather than contracting the target muscle. The mind muscle connection and its validity is kind of debated in the literature, and we don't really have many studies. I think just one study measuring it so far, but anecdotally, a lot of elite level bodybuilders use it, and we should at least think about it, but maybe not hang our hat on it. Another thing that might point towards you hitting your local limit is going to be joint fatigue and muscle fatigue. So if you randomly start feeling elbow pain or pain in your bicep tendon or in the middle of your bicep, that's a sign that we need to deload that muscle group and potentially that you've bumped up against the highest amount of volume that that muscle can handle. Or you need to switch exercises, which is a different video. If you've bumped up against your systemic ability to recover, you're going to experience more broad scale effects. You're going to be noticing things like sleep disruptions, mood disturbances, appetite dysregulation, etc. Desire to train. All these things are kind of showing you that the system as a whole is overworking and you might need to take a step back. So you can toy around with these volumes, again, measuring performance, pump, disruption, soreness, and contrasting that with these markers of fatigue being joint pain, desire to train, the things you mentioned prior, and using those metrics to add 1 to 3 sets per week, kind of finding that sweet spot where you get all of these metrics of stimulus, but not very many metrics of this fatigue that we've kind of outlined. And then you've kind of found your sweet spot from there. And if you're worried about systemic fatigue that we mentioned a little bit later in this video, you do have a couple of cool options. You can take muscles that you don't really care about that much, let's say calves. Just kidding. If you don't train calves, I don't want to be your friend. It's the best pump in the world. Don't come at me. You could take muscles that are a lower priority and actually drop the volume to minimum effective volume or maintenance volume. So you're using less systemic resources for them. And you can take those sets in that gym time and allocate those to more important things such as like forearms or arms. Because if you know, you know. Hopefully this has been a useful field guide for you for kind of selecting your volume, whether you're a beginner or a more advanced lifter looking to kind of maximize your gains. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments.